Hi, I'm Al Martinez and welcome to Untrashed. Today I'm going to show you how to use aluminum. And aluminum is something that we get quite often, and we either recycle it if we can, or there's some things that you can't recycle and you just have to throw these away. So today what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you how to make some bookmarks. And the bookmarks can be this size, or they can be this size, or they can be pretty much any size you like based on the material that you get from the cans. So the technique that I'm going to show you is called repose. And repose is a process where you take metal and you put lines on the outside and then you push from the back to give you this sort of high relief pattern. So these are done in brass, and these are done with a hammer and chisel, and that's a different process. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do sort of the same thing on a smaller scale using aluminum and a gel pen. So the first thing I'm going to show you is how to cut these cans open, and the tools you're going to need is one of these is probably the best. You could use a sharp kitchen knife, but these are probably better. So with the can, what I want to talk to you about is the properties of the material. So when they make these cans, they take a flat sheet and they push it into a mold, and that stretches the material and makes it stiff. So that's called work hardening. So the cans have sort of a memory, and it kind of makes them stiff. So we're going to use that to our advantage in how we cut it open. So if you look at the can and you push on the sides, you can see where the bottom here, and you move in a little bit, it's flexible. And the same thing with the top. But these ridges here, they're really strong. So we're going to cut just inside this part and just inside that part. So the way I found the easiest thing to do is to take one of these and you hold it there and you just push the tip in, and the metal sort of tears. You don't cut it, so you're just pushing the blade into the metal, and the metal is being torn literally. So we'll just work our way around here. You'll find that the closer you get to that ridge, the harder the metal is. So if you go inside a little bit, you're going to find that it tears quite easy. And the other thing you're going to want to do is to wear gloves, because this stuff is sharp. So I want to show you something here. When I bend this metal back and forth, it just breaks like that. So we're going to take the bottom and we're going to set it aside, because I'll show you what you can do with that later. Now the other thing, see how this is all ragged and rough? You're going to want something like this. You can use a spoon as well, and you're just going to rub the edge. The other thing you're going to do is you're going to take your spoon or your knife and you're going to rub it on this edge here. And this is called burnishing. And what burnishing does is it pushes the metal back into itself, so it's not quite so sharp. So we're going to do the same thing to the other side. that, set that aside. So there we have the body of the can. So I'm going to flatten this part again. And it's a good practice to always burnish these edges. And if you hold it up to the light, you can see a little bright spot. It gets brighter as you burnish it, and that means that it's smooth like this part of a butter knife. It's not going to cut you. So now we've got this part that we're going to be ready to open up. And what we're going to do is, because we're going to make these roughly this size, I'm going to fold this can flat. I'm going to do one side at a time. So I push that down like that. So when you're tearing paper, if you fold the paper and then crease it, and when you open it up and fold it the other way, it tears quite easy. Well, with this can aluminum, when I just open it up like this and bend it the other way, watch how easy that breaks. Breaks straight too. So I'm going to do the other side. Oh, but first what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the curl out of this can. Now, when we did that dragon egg, I showed you how to take the curl out of the straight paper. And what you do is you take your material with the curl side up, and you just pull it over the edge. And you sort of undo the tension in the material. Now you have to be careful with the aluminum can. You don't want to pull it too sharp, because then you'll get it curved in the other way. So that's pretty flat. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to fold it in half. Crease this. And then when I open this up, you can almost feel it breaking. See how easy that is? Okay, so now we have our flat material. So the bookmark that I'm going to show you, or the size, is based on a thing, well, it's kind of a daily practice that some people do, and it's called a Zentangle. And a lot of people do these, it's kind of like drawing meditation. So it's normally a 3-inch square. So you draw a 3-inch square on a piece of paper, and then what you do is you start in each corner and you just make a line. And when you make those lines, then you look at the lines and you think, that part looks like it should be curved. So you put lines on it, or you can do whatever. And basically, that's basically what a Zentangle is. So we're going to do one of these bookmarks based on the Zentangle. So I'm going to take one sheet of this, and I'm going to cut this nice and straight with scissors. Because this is going to be a bookmark, it needs to look not like it's been torn off a can. Take the corners off. So the edges that I've just cut, I'm going to burnish. good to go all the way around just in case you forgot some part. But you don't want to be working and all of a sudden bleeding on your work. It's messy. Okay, so there we have our starting material. So the other thing you're going to need is you're going to need a piece of card. And this is like the cushion that you use to push the metal into. When I do this, I put this in some thermoplastic, and what happens is that when I hammer in these sides, the metal is allowed to be pushed into the material because it's soft. So that's what this is. This is the cushion that I'm going to use as the background of this. So take my Zentangle pattern, put it in the middle. Then I take my gel pen and just go around this. So when you do this, you don't have to push really hard. And these gel pens are good for this because they have a rolling ball in here. So it's not like you're dragging it across the thing, it's rolling over the surface. So you can see that there's a line there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over, and I can see where these lines are. I'm going to use my ruler to make some other lines just inside those lines. And this is kind of decoration. You don't have to do this. This is just one of the options I'm showing you today. So this does two things. It actually creates depth because you're pushing from the back, and it also flattens things out because you've given it some structural integrity by raising this part to the background. And that's basically what they do when they make these. All these lines here in the bottom are to keep the bottom of this flat when they put the pastry in here and ship it someplace. It's the same thing with these pie tins. All of these lines in here help make it strong as a container. So now we've got the inside of this ready to do our pattern. So there's a couple of options. You can use templates like these to do different shapes. So I'm just going to randomly do things here. So I'm going to take this oval, mark out my oval. I'm going to use the half circle to add some other elements to this. So you can see that there. I'm going to add to the back. And this gives the pattern some depth. Okay, so now when I look at this in the light, I can see that this is the lowest part of this design. Then it goes to this platform, and then I've got these other parts that look like they're even higher. So you're creating depth, which is essentially what this process repoussé does. So now you can decide to add or leave these as simple or as complex as you like. You can add things that are freehand to this. You can literally do whatever you like. So you can make them sort of very disciplined geometrically designed, or you can do it very organic. See the difference between those two? So that's one thing you can do in terms of the design. You can keep it simple, and basically that just goes in your book. You can change this design shape. So I'm going to make one that's a little bit different using my scissors. I'm going to make this one leaf shape. So I basically cut out my leaf shape. I'm going to burnish this first. When you do things like this that have a bit of danger element to them, you sort of learn what process you have to go before you move on, just so that you're safe. So taking the cutting edge off of this is important. And you want to know how I learned that? I cut myself a few times. So now I'm going to add some leaf element to this. And because it's a leaf, the lines are going to be graceful and organic. The other thing I want to say is sometimes I make this look easy because I've been doing it a long time, so I've gotten used to doing things by hand. But I also want to say that if you're an artist or a creator, you'll find that your work goes through this period called the ugly duckling stage. And the ugly duckling stage is that stage where you look at it and say, I'm not too sure about that. That doesn't look quite good. But I found if you keep going, comes to a stage where you look at it and you say, hey, that's not too bad. So yeah, so if you're working on something, and sometimes I put it aside, and I think, I'm not sure which way to go on this. I put it aside and I leave it, and I usually leave it someplace where I can see it. And I might get an idea and say, oh, let me try this. Okay, so there we are. So that looks a bit more three-dimensional. And the other thing is that when you raise the metal and you higher and lower spots like this, you end up something that isn't quite as flexible. It's got a bit of flex, but it's still flat enough to be put in your book. The other thing I thought you could do is if you didn't want to make a bookmark and you wanted to do like a piece of wall art, you can take, and this is one that I prepared before, and basically it's the whole side of the can, of that size can. So I've done the whole thing, laid it out, cut it smooth, and I've glued it inside this cardboard frame. So I wasn't thinking until I turned it over that it still has the lettering from the box. But I thought, well, let's put a background, a black background on it. So on this one, and you could hang this up on your wall. It can have your name, could have a pattern on it. It can be something that you've drawn on paper. And you're going to transfer it to this. So for this part, drawing on paper, I'm going to use a ballpoint pen so I can see which lines I've already transferred. Probably do this with tracing paper too. If there was a drawing in a book that you wanted to copy or transfer, or you could do this, just do it by eye and just draw something that you think looks good. I encourage you to just play. That's basically what I do. I play with materials. Sometimes I think, not sure about that one. I put that aside. Sometimes I think, oh, I like this, and do more of that. Okay. So now, I've got that sort of dragon in this picture here. So I can do a little bit of repose in the back. This is where you need good light, because you need to see the reflection of where your lines come through. Pretty good. This is stylized, but I like that. Okay, so basically, that's pretty much it. Oh, the other thing I wanted to show you, because I don't like to waste any part of the trash that I'm using, is how you could make something out of the bottom of this. So the bottom of this has this really nice dish. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut away the material so the dish actually touches the bottom. So with my scissors, get my stronger scissors. I'll cut this excess material off here. Okay, so now you can see that the bottom of this is the lowest point when I put this on the table. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my awl and I'm going to put a little dimple right in the very center of this. So I find the center. So that's 47, so 23. Put my card down. So what you want to do is you want to make a dimple. You don't want to push all the way through. So look at the bottom and just see that you've got this tiny little bump there. And that bump is the lowest part of your top. Now this is something you might do just because you want to. So you can sort of create a game where you spin this and you can put marks on here and it points to certain things. And that'll spin for quite some time. You can do patterns on the inside that create visual effects. Now by watching these spirals, it sort of calms you down. You can hypnotize your parents and ask them for their bank card. Anyway, so those are the kinds of things that you can do. You can do the same thing with these things. If you took your scissors and cut these up, the difference in the material is that this stuff is really soft. Okay, I was talking to my daughter about this whole process, and she actually makes earrings out of this material. But what she does is she anneals it by holding this either over a candle, and what that does is that softens the metal, it relaxes it, so it makes it soft like this. And this stuff is really soft. So if you're going to use this for a bookmark or something, you have to know that this bends a lot easier. And it's easier to draw patterns on this. Okay, so you can get a lot more relief from this material because it's softer. Same thing with these pie tins. They're both kind of soft. So that's essentially what you can do with aluminum cans, is to make bookmarks. And speaking of bookmarks, what I want you to know is that next month I'm going to show you how to make a book. And the material we're going to use is we're going to use shopping bags. So for next month, here's what I want you to do in preparation. I want you to take a shopping bag and pull the handles off. Then take your scissors and we're going to cut the bottom of the bag off. Then I take just a kitchen knife, and this is one of those serrated ones. And I use it to cut the bottom off. When you do that, make sure you do it in here. Side. Take my bag, lay it out like this, and I'm going to split the side open. So when you're making a book, the thing that you need to create is you need to create the part of the book that's going to be the spine of the book. Okay, so I'm going to use this fold as the spine. one part. So that's another part. So when you put, because I've already started one of these, which we're going to finish next month. When you put these together, you put the short part against the long part. Okay, so I'm going to do one more. Folding these creases reversed so the paper lays flat. I'm leaving this one a tight pin because that's going to be the spine. So what you're going to be creating is you're creating the pages of this book. And depending on how many pages you want, is how many bags you're going to use. Okay, so I've got these two here. Put this one in here. I'm going to put the short side up against the long side. So essentially your book's going to have short, long, short, long. So I'll put this one like this, the long side up against the short side. So when you're creating a book, essentially what you're going to do is you're going to have four sheets to make one signature. And depending on how thick you want your book to be, you create as many signatures as you want. So what I want you to do is I want you to take some shopping bags if you want to make a book, and prepare these and put them together in signatures, and I'll show you what to do next. And I want to show you a book that I've already made using shopping bags. This is one that I made quite some time ago. I decided, well, what can you do with all these shopping bags? This is a long time before I even thought about doing Untrashed. So I decided I was going to make a book. So I used shopping bags, and I put my signatures together, and I put quotes in the pages that were blank. So some pages have blank on both sides, and some pages have shopping bag and blank on the other side. And the other thing I've done is I've added Zentangles to my quotes. So what I've done is I've put a quote on here, and I've decorated the page with a Zentangle. And this is like an illustrated manuscript. So this is my book of quotes. This piece here is essentially what we did today. I just used a bit of pewter, and I did this repoussé technique, and then decorated the cover to my book. And what we can use for the cover is we can use cardboard and we can use fabric. The spine on this is from an old jacket. So this book is basically an untrashed book. The only and even the quotes are trashed because people have said them a long time ago. And I use this book sometimes, and I'll just come to the book and I'll open it up and I'll say, my quote for the day is, "I have no special talent. I'm only passionate curious." And that's by Albert Einstein. So essentially that's Untrashed today. So remember, every little bit of untrashed helps. Thanks for watching.